I can't believe you would do this to me, Damien. At my father's funeral, of all places. My voice trembles with rage and disbelief as I confront my husband, his shirt hastily buttoned and lipstick smeared on his collar. Damien's eyes widen in surprise before narrowing with contempt. Don't be so dramatic, Raven. It's not like you were ever enough for me anyway. His words cut deep, reopening wounds I thought had long since scarred over. I think back to when we first met, how his charm and promises of success had blinded me to the red flags. I was just a naive, struggling artist then, desperate for love and validation. I gave up everything for you, I choke out, my vision blurring with unshed tears. My art, my dreams, my self-respect, and for what? A loveless marriage and a lifetime of regret? Damien scoffs, his handsome face twisting into a sneer. You were always so pathetic, Raven, clinging to me like I was your last hope. Well, guess what? I never needed you. I only married you for your father's money and connections. The truth of his words hits me like a punch to the gut. I think of all the years I wasted trying to win his love and approval while he was busy building a life with someone else, someone younger, prettier, more talented. Who is she, Damien? The woman you were just fucking in the coat room? My voice is low and dangerous, barely recognizable to my own ears. He smirks, unashamed. Her name is Sasha. She's everything you're not, Raven. Young, passionate, with a real future in the art world, and she's pregnant with my child. I feel like I might be sick. The betrayal is too much, too raw. I think of my father, cold in his casket just feet away. He never approved of Damien, never thought he was good enough for me, and now with his last breath he was proven right. I want a divorce, I say firmly, my hands shaking as I reach for my phone. I'm done being your doormat, Damien. I'm done letting you destroy me. He laughs, cruel and mocking. You'll never be free of me, Raven. I own you body and soul. Without me, you're nothing. But as I press record on my phone, capturing his vicious words for all the world to hear, I feel a flicker of something long forgotten stir inside me. Something like hope, like defiance. You're wrong, Damien, I say calmly, my tears drying on my cheeks. I may have lost myself for a while, but I'm taking my life back, starting now. And with that, I turn and walk away, my head held high despite the curious stares and whispered gossip of the funeral guests. I don't know what the future holds, but one thing is certain. Raven Callaghan is done being shattered. It's time to pick up the pieces and create a new masterpiece from the ruins of my broken dreams. The sleek lines of Damien's penthouse mock me as I step inside, a cruel reminder of the gilded cage I now call home. The minimalist decor, once so chic and sophisticated, feels cold and sterile, like a museum display of my shattered dreams. Raven, darling, you're back, Damien calls from the living room, his voice dripping with false affection. How was the funeral? I clench my fists, the memory of his betrayal still fresh and stinging. Like you care, I mutter, kicking off my heels and padding into the room. He's sprawled on the leather sofa, a glass of scotch dangling from his fingertips. Of course I care, sweetheart. Alistair was like a father to me. I snort, the irony almost too much to bear. Really? Because last I checked, most people don't skip their father-in-law's funeral to screw their mistress in the coat room. Damien's eyes flash with annoyance, his mask of concern slipping. I thought we were past that little misunderstanding, Raven. I explained everything. Misunderstanding? I echo, my voice rising with incredulity. You called me pathetic, said you only married me for my father's money, and let's not forget the part where you got your barely legal side piece pregnant. He sets down his drink, his jaw clenching. Watch your tone, Raven. You're treading on thin ice. I laugh, the sound harsh and brittle. Or what, Damien? You'll leave me? Ruin my life? Newsflash, asshole, you already have. Just then, the front door slams, announcing the arrival of my least favorite person. Lilith, Damien's teenage daughter from his first marriage, saunters in, her heavily lined eyes narrowing as she spots me. Oh, look, the gold digger's back, she sneers, tossing her designer bag on the counter. Shouldn't you be out spending my inheritance on tacky art supplies? Yes, I bite back a retort, knowing it's useless to engage with her. Lilith has hated me from the moment I moved in, seeing me as a threat to her daddy's fortune and attention. Lilith, please, Damien chides, but there's no real rebuke in his tone. Raven is part of this family now. You need to show her some respect. Respect? Lilith scoffs, her heavily glossed lips curling in disdain. For what? Her amazing ability to spread her legs and trap men into marriage? The words hit me like a slap, the air rushing from my lungs. I turned to Damien, expecting him to defend me, to put his daughter in her place. But he just shrugs, reaching for his drink again. She's not wrong, Raven. You didn't exactly bring much to the table when we met. No money, no connections, just a pretty face and a decent pair of tits. I feel like I might be sick, the room spinning around me. Is this really what he thinks of me? Is this all I am to him, to everyone in this godforsaken family? I'm an artist, I whisper, my voice cracking. I have talent, I have dreams. Lilith rolls her eyes, her laughter cruel and mocking. Dreams? Wake up, Raven. You're nothing but a washed-up wannabe who got lucky, and now that Daddy's gone, your luck's about to run out. She flounces out of the room, her parting words hanging in the air like a noose. I turn to Damien, desperate for some shred of comfort, of reassurance, but he just shakes his head, his expression a mix of pity and contempt. She's right, you know. Without Alistair's money, we're screwed. The gallery's in the red, and your little art projects aren't exactly paying the bills. I feel like I'm suffocating, the walls of this beautiful, terrible apartment closing in on me. Is this really my life now? A loveless marriage, a resentful stepdaughter, a husband who sees me as nothing more than a meal ticket? I think back to the girl I used to be, the one who believed in love and art and the power of her own voice. She seems so far away now, a distant memory of a life I can never reclaim. But as I stand there, something inside me hardens, a small, fierce spark of defiance flickering to life. I may be trapped, I may be broken, but I'm not dead yet. And one way or another, I'm going to make them pay for what they've done to me. 5 years. That's how long it's been since I stood in front of the mirror, a shadow of the woman I used to be. My once vibrant eyes are dull, my skin pale and drawn. The paintbrushes that were once an extension of my soul now lie forgotten, gathering dust in the corner of my studio. I hear the front door slam, followed by the click of high heels on the marble floor. Lilith, now 21 and every bit as vicious as her father, enters the room, her lip curled in a sneer. Still moping around, I see, she taunts, her gaze sweeping over my paint-splattered sweatpants and messy bun. Don't you have anything better to do than wallow in self-pity? I don't bother to respond, knowing it will only fuel her cruelty. Lilith has made it her mission to torment me at every turn, blaming me for the family's financial struggles and her own miserable existence. You know, if you weren't such a useless leech, maybe Daddy wouldn't have to work so hard to keep us afloat, she continues, examining her perfectly manicured nails. But I guess that's what happens when you marry a talentless gold digger. I feel a flicker of anger, but it's quickly extinguished by the weight of my own despair. She's right, after all. What have I contributed to this family, to this life? Nothing but broken dreams and empty promises. The sound of the door opening again jolts me from my thoughts. Damien enters, his suit impeccable and his expression unreadable. He barely spares me a glance as he pours himself a drink, the amber liquid sloshing against the sides of the glass. Lilith, darling, I need to speak with Raven alone, he says, his tone calm but firm. Why don't you go shopping with your friends? Use the black card. Lilith's eyes light up, her earlier venom forgotten in the face of her father's generosity. She snatches the credit card from his outstretched hand and flounces out of the room, leaving me alone with the man I once thought I loved. Your father called, Damien says, taking a sip of his scotch. He wants to see you. I blink, surprised by the mention of Alistair. We haven't spoken in months, not since our last explosive argument about my life choices. What does he want? I ask, my voice hoarse from disuse. Damien shrugs, his gaze still fixed on the view outside the window. He didn't say, but he sounded different, like he was in pain. A flicker of hope ignites in my chest, a tiny ember in the ashes of my dreams. Could this be it? The chance I've been waiting for? The opportunity to escape this gilded hell and start anew. I'll go see him, I say, my resolve strengthening with each word. Maybe he's finally ready to listen, to understand. Damien scoffs, draining the last of his drink. Don't get your hopes up, Raven. Alistair Blackwood is a stubborn old bastard. He'll never change. But as I walk out of the penthouse, my head held high for the first time in years, I feel a sense of purpose, of determination. I may have lost myself along the way, but I'm not going to let them win. I'll see my father, hear what he has to say. And then, one way or another, I'll find a way to break free from this nightmare and reclaim the life I once had, even if it means burning everything to the ground and starting from scratch. The church is silent, save for the muffled sobs of the mourners and the soft rustling of tissues. I sit in the front pew, my eyes fixed on the polished wooden casket that holds my father's lifeless body. Alistair Blackwood, the man who was supposed to be my rock, my protector, is gone. I feel a hand on my shoulder and turn to see Damien, his face a mask of feigned sympathy. "I'm so sorry for your loss, darling," he murmurs, his voice like silk hiding a dagger. "Your father was a great man." I nod, too numb to speak. I think back to our last conversation, just days before his sudden death. He had hinted at a change in his will, a final act of love and redemption. But now I'll never know what he wanted to say, never have the chance to make things right between us. The service ends, and I stand on shaky legs, accepting condolences from strangers and distant relatives. Damien is nowhere to be seen, and a sinking feeling settles in my gut. I excuse myself and slip out of the church, my heels clicking on the stone steps. I hear voices coming from the coat room, and I freeze, my heart pounding in my chest. It's Damien, and he's not alone. I inch closer, my breath caught in my throat. "God, Sasha, you feel so good," he groans, and I hear the unmistakable sound of flesh on flesh. "I can't wait to leave that frigid bitch and start a new life with you." "What about the money?" a woman's voice asks, breathless and eager. "You said she was going to inherit everything." Damien laughs, the sound cruel and mocking. "Don't worry about that, baby. I have a plan. Once the will is read, I'll contest it, say that Raven manipulated the old man into cutting me out. She's got no proof, no witnesses. It'll be her word against mine." I feel like I might be sick, my stomach churning with rage and disgust. How could I have been so blind, so stupid? I trusted him, loved him, and all along he was plotting to use me and toss me aside. "And what about the kid?" Sasha asks, her voice tinged with worry. "You sure it's yours?" "Of course it's mine," Damien scoffs. "You think I'd let some other man touch what's mine?" "No, this is our ticket to the good life, Sasha, a new start, with Raven's money and my brains. We'll be unstoppable." I can't listen anymore, can't bear to hear another word of their sickening plan. I fumble for my phone, my hands shaking as I hit the record button. I need proof, need to expose Damien for the lying, cheating bastard he is. I step into the coat room, my head held high and my eyes blazing with fury. "Well, well, well," I say, my voice dripping with venom. "What do we have here?" Damien and Sasha spring apart, their faces flushed and their clothing disheveled. "Raven, I can explain," Damien stammers, his eyes wide with panic. "Oh, I think you've explained quite enough," I snarl, holding up my phone. "I heard everything, Damien, every disgusting, despicable word." Sasha blanches, her hand flying to her stomach. "You recorded us?" she whispers, her voice trembling. I nod, a cold smile spreading across my face. "Every single second. And now I'm going to make sure the whole world knows what a pathetic, conniving worm you really are, Damien Callaghan." I turn on my heel and storm out of the room, my heart pounding with a newfound sense of purpose. I may have lost my father, my marriage, and my self-respect, but I'll be damned if I let them take anything else from me. It's time to fight back, to take what's mine and burn the rest to the ground. And I won't stop until Damien and his little whore are nothing but ashes at my feet. The funeral guests stare at me in stunned silence as I march back into the church, my phone clutched in my hand like a smoking gun. Damien follows close behind, his face a mask of panic and fury. "Raven, please, let's talk about this in private," he hisses, reaching for my arm. I yank away from his grasp, my eyes blazing with a fire I thought had long since been extinguished. "Oh, we're going to talk, all right," I say, my voice ringing out clear and strong. "But not in private, not anymore." I turn to face the crowd, my heart pounding in my chest. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement to make. My husband, Damien Callaghan, is a liar, a cheat, and a thief." Gasps and murmurs ripple through the room, and I see Lilith's face turn pale with shock. Good. Let her see her precious daddy for the snake he really is. "I have proof," I continue, holding up my phone. "Recorded evidence of Damien's infidelity and his plans to contest my father's will and steal my inheritance." Damien lunges for the phone, but I'm too quick for him. I hit play and his voice fills the church, every damning word echoing off the high ceilings. You bitch, he snarls when the recording ends, his face twisted with rage. You think you can destroy me? I made you, Raven. Without me, you're nothing. I laugh, the sound harsh and bitter. That's where you're wrong, Damien. I'm not nothing. I'm Raven fucking Blackwood, and I'm done being your doormat. I reach into my purse and pull out a thick envelope, tossing it at his feet. I've already spoken to my lawyer. My father changed his will before he died, leaving everything to me. And as for you, you're out on your ass, with nothing but the clothes on your back and the child support payments for your bastard kid. Damien's face drains of color, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. You can't do this, he whispers, his voice trembling. I'll fight it. I'll take you for everything you're worth. I smile, cold and cruel. You can try, but I have the law on my side and a team of the best lawyers money can buy. You're finished, Damien. And as for you, Lilith? I turn to face my stepdaughter, my eyes narrowing. Don't even think about coming to me for help. You're just as bad as your father, and I'm done enabling your toxic behavior. You want money, get a job. You want love, earn it. But don't expect anything from me, ever again. Lilith's face crumples, tears streaming down her cheeks. Please, Raven, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it, any of it. I was just angry, jealous. Don't cut me off, I need you. I shake my head, my heart hardening to her crocodile tears. You need a reality check, Lilith, and I'm done being your punching bag. I have my own life to live, my own dreams to chase, and I won't let you or anyone else hold me back anymore. I turn to the stunned crowd, my head held high. Thank you all for coming to pay your respects to my father. But if you'll excuse me, I have a divorce to finalize and a new chapter to begin. I walk out of the church, my steps light and my heart soaring. For the first time in years, I feel alive, powerful, in control of my own destiny. Damien and Lilith can rot in the hell they've created for themselves. I have a legacy to claim and a life to rebuild, one brushstroke at a time, and nothing and no one is going to stand in my way. The gallery is buzzing with activity, the white walls lined with paintings that seem to vibrate with energy and emotion. I stand in the center of the room, a glass of champagne in my hand and a smile on my face. This is my moment, my triumph, and I'm going to savor every second of it. I see Damien across the room, his face haggard and his suit hanging off his frame. He looks like a man who's lost everything, and in a way, he has. I made sure of that. I saunter over to him, my heels clicking on the polished concrete floor. Damien, darling, so glad you could make it, I purr, my voice dripping with false sweetness. I know how busy you must be, what with the job hunt and all. He glares at me, his eyes bloodshot and his jaw clenched. You think you've won, don't you? He growls, his voice low and menacing. You think you can just destroy my life and walk away unscathed? I laugh, the sound bright and carefree. Oh, Damien, I don't think I've won. I know I have, and as for walking away unscathed, I'm not the one who's been blacklisted from every gallery in the city, am I? His face twists with rage, and for a moment I think he might actually hit me. But then a voice cuts through the tension, smooth and confident. Raven, darling, there you are. I've been looking all over for you. I turn to see Marcus, my new business partner and the owner of the most prestigious gallery in town. He's tall and handsome, with salt and pepper hair and a smile that could charm the pants off a nun. Marcus, so sorry to keep you waiting, I say, taking his arm and shooting Damien a triumphant look. I was just catching up with an old friend. Damien's eyes narrow, his fists clenching at his sides. Friend? Is that what you call the man who ruined your life? Marcus raises an eyebrow, his gaze flicking between us. Ruined her life? From where I'm standing, it looks like Raven's doing just fine. Better than fine, actually. Her show is a sensation, and the critics are calling her the next big thing in the art world. I smile, leaning into Marcus's side. What can I say? I had a lot of inspiration to draw from. Pain, betrayal, the depths of human cruelty. It's all there on the canvas for everyone to see. Damien scoffs, his face twitched with disgust. You're pathetic, Raven. Using our marriage, our private life, as fodder for your little art projects. Don't you have any shame? I step forward, my eyes blazing with fury. Shame? You want to talk about shame, Damien? How about the shame of being married to a man who cheated on me, lied to me, and tried to steal my inheritance? The shame of watching my stepdaughter spiral into addiction and despair because of your toxic influence? No, Damien, I have no shame. Not anymore. But you? You should be drowning in it. He opens his mouth to retort, but I cut him off with a wave of my hand. Save it. I'm done listening to your lies and excuses. I have a show to run and a life to live, and you have a one-way ticket to rock bottom. Enjoy the ride. I turn on my heel and walk away, Marcus at my side. I can feel Damien's eyes boring into my back, but I don't look back. I'm done looking back, done letting my past define me. I'm Raven Blackwood, artist, survivor, and queen of my own fucking destiny. And nothing, and no one, is going to stand in my way. As we mingle with the other guests, I catch sight of Lilith, her face gaunt and her eyes hollow. She's talking to a man in a cheap suit, and I can tell by the way she's fidgeting that she's jonesing for a fix. Part of me wants to go to her, to offer her help and support. But I know that's not what she needs. Not really. What she needs is to hit rock bottom, to face the consequences of her choices, and learn to stand on her own 2 feet. Just like I did. The applause is deafening as I take my final bow, the stage lights hot on my skin and the adrenaline pumping through my veins. I've done it. I've poured my heart and soul onto the canvas, and the world has embraced me with open arms. I step off the stage and into a sea of congratulations and well wishes, my cheeks aching from the constant smiling. But then I see a familiar figure pushing through the crowd, his face haggard and his eyes wild. "Raven, please, I need to talk to you," Damien pleads, his voice hoarse and desperate. "I've lost everything, my job, my home, my reputation. I have nothing left." I stare at him, my heart hardening to his pathetic display. "And whose fault is that, Damien? You brought this on yourself with your lies and your cheating and your greed." He shakes his head, tears streaming down his face. I know. I was wrong, so wrong. But please, Raven, I'm begging you. Forgive me. Give me another chance. I'll do anything, be anything you want me to be." I laugh, the sound harsh and bitter. "Anything I want you to be? I wanted you to be a faithful husband, a loving partner, a decent human being. But you couldn't even manage that, could you?" He falls to his knees, his hands clasped in front of him like a penitent sinner. "I'm sorry, Raven. I'm so sorry. I was weak, selfish, stupid, but I've changed, I swear. I'll prove it to you, every day for the rest of our lives. Just give me one more chance, please." I look down at him, this man who once held my heart in his hands and crushed it without a second thought. And I feel nothing. No love, no hate, no pity. Just a cold, empty void where my feelings for him used to be. "Get up, Damien," I say, my voice flat and emotionless. "You're making a scene." He staggers to his feet, his face a mask of desperation and hope. And does that mean? I shake my head, a small, cruel smile playing at the corners of my mouth. "It means I'm done with you, Damien. Done with your lies, your manipulation, your endless cycle of betrayal and false remorse. I gave you chances, more than you ever deserved, and you threw them all away like the selfish, spineless worm you are." His face crumples, his shoulders sagging in defeat. "Raven, please." I hold up a hand, cutting him off mid-sentence. "No more, Damien. No more pleading. No more promises. No more second chances. You're dead to me, do you understand? Dead and buried, just like the love I once had for you." I turn to walk away, but he grabs my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. "You can't do this, Raven. You need me, just like I need you. We're meant to be together. Can't you see that?" I yank my arm out of his grasp, my eyes flashing with fury. The only thing I see is a pathetic, delusional man who can't accept that his time is up. You had your chance, Damien. Multiple chances, and you blew them all. Now it's time to face the consequences of your actions. I walk away, my head held high and my heart light. I can hear him calling after me, his voice growing more and more desperate with each step I take. But I don't look back, don't falter in my stride. I'm done being a victim, done being a pawn in someone else's game. I'm the master of my own fate now, the captain of my own ship. And I'm sailing towards a future that's bright and bold and full of endless possibilities. As I step out into the cool night air, I feel a sense of peace wash over me. I faced my demons, confronted my past, and emerged stronger and wiser for it. I'm ready for whatever comes next, whatever challenges and triumphs lie ahead. Because I know that no matter what, I'll face them head on, with courage and grace and an unshakable belief in myself. I am Raven Blackwood, and I am unstoppable. The sun streams through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new penthouse, casting a warm glow over the sleek, modern furniture, and the vibrant paintings that adorn the walls. I stand on the balcony, a cup of coffee in my hand, and gaze out at the city skyline, a sense of peace and contentment washing over me. It's been 6 months since I walked away from Damien and Lilith, 6 months since I took back control of my life and my destiny, and in that time, I've accomplished more than I ever thought possible. My art has taken the world by storm, with collectors and critics alike hailing me as a visionary, a force to be reckoned with. I've sold pieces to museums and galleries around the globe, and my bank account has never looked healthier. But it's not just about the money or the fame. It's about the sense of purpose, the feeling of fulfillment that comes from knowing I'm making a difference in the world. I've started a foundation, using my wealth and influence to support young artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. I mentor them, guide them, help them navigate the treacherous waters of the art world. And every time I see one of them succeed, every time I watch them take the stage and bask in the applause, I feel a rush of pride and joy that's unlike anything I've ever experienced. But even as I revel in my newfound success, I can't help but feel a twinge of emptiness, a sense that something is missing. And I know exactly what, or rather who, it is. Lilith. I haven't spoken to her since that fateful night at the gallery, haven't seen her since she stumbled out of the building, high and desperate and lost. But I've kept tabs on her, watched from afar as she spiraled deeper and deeper into addiction and despair. Part of me wants to reach out, to offer her the same support and guidance I give to my young protégés. But another part of me, the part that still bears the scars of her cruelty and betrayal, hesitates. And then, one day, I receive a letter. It's from Lilith, written from a rehab facility in Arizona. She tells me she's sorry, that she's been working on herself, trying to make amends for all the pain she's caused. She asks for my forgiveness, my help in rebuilding her life. And as I read her words, I feel a stirring in my heart, a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, there's still a chance for redemption. I write back, cautiously at first, then with growing warmth and affection. We exchange letters, then phone calls, then visits. And slowly but surely I watch as Lilith transforms before my eyes, shedding the layers of anger and bitterness and emerging as a new woman, strong and resilient and full of promise. Together we work to build a new life for her, one based on honesty and trust and mutual respect. I help her find a job, a place to live, a network of supportive friends and mentors. And as I watch her flourish, I feel a sense of pride and accomplishment that rivals even my greatest artistic triumphs. But even as Lilith and I mend our broken relationship, I know that there's one loose end left to tie up. One final piece of the puzzle that needs to fall into place. Damien. I've avoided him for months, refusing his calls and emails and desperate pleas for forgiveness. But I know that I can't run forever, can't hide from the truth of what he did and who he is, and so I agree to meet with him, one last time. We sit across from each other in a quiet coffee shop, two strangers who once shared a life and a love. He looks older, thinner, his eyes haunted by the weight of his mistakes. And as he speaks, as he pours out his heart and his soul, I feel a flicker of something that might be pity, might be understanding, but I also feel a sense of closure, a sense that this chapter of my life is finally coming to an end. And as I walk away from him, as I step out into the bright, bustling streets of the city, I know that I'm ready for whatever comes next. Because I am Raven Blackwood, artist, survivor, and master of my own destiny, and nothing and no one can ever take that away from me. You're nothing without me, Evelyn. Remember that. Dominic's words cut deep as I cradle our newborn daughter, Aria. I look down at her innocent face, her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I feel a wave of despair wash over me. How did I get here? How did I let myself become so trapped, so helpless? I've always been a strong, independent woman, but Dominic has a way of making me feel small and insignificant. Since Aria's birth, his controlling behavior has escalated to new heights. He dictates my every move, from what I wear to who I can see. He even controls our finances, leaving me completely dependent on during my maternity leave. I'm going out, Dominic announces, grabbing his keys from the counter. I expect dinner to be ready when I get back. I nod silently, not daring to argue. I've learned the hard way that defiance only leads to more pain. As the door slams behind him, I let out a shaky breath and hug Arya closer to my chest. I think back to the early days of our relationship when Dominic seemed like the perfect man. Charming, successful, and attentive, he swept me off my feet. Our whirlwind romance led to a quick marriage, and before I knew it, I was pregnant with Arya. But now, as I sit alone in our lavish apartment, surrounded by all the trappings of wealth, I feel more trapped than ever. Dominic's true colors have emerged, and I'm left wondering how I ever fell for his facade. A sudden cry from Arya jolts me back to the present. I rock her gently, whispering soothing words as I try to calm her. But even as I comfort my daughter, I can feel the weight of Dominic's control bearing down on me. I glance at the clock, realizing I only have a few hours before he returns. I need to start dinner, but the thought of facing another evening of his criticism and verbal abuse makes my stomach churn. As I lay Arya down in her crib, I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me is a shell of her former self. Dark circles under her eyes, a forced smile masking the pain. I hardly recognize her, but as I watch Arya drift off to sleep, a flicker of determination sparks within me. I can't let my daughter grow up thinking this is normal, that this is what love looks like. I need to find a way out, not just for myself but for her. I take a deep breath and straighten my shoulders. I may feel trapped and helpless now, but I refuse to let Dominic break me. I will find a way to escape his grasp, to build a better life for Arya and myself. As I head to the kitchen to start dinner, I silently vow to myself that this will be the last meal I cook under Dominic's roof. I don't know how, and I don't know when, but I will find the strength to break free from this nightmare. For Arya's sake and for my own, I have to. As I sit in the darkness of Arya's nursery, my mind drifts back to the beginning of my relationship with Dominic. It all seemed so perfect, like a fairy tale come to life. I was 28, a successful young woman with a promising career when I met him at a charity event. He was 35, charming, and incredibly handsome. I was instantly smitten. Our courtship was a whirlwind of expensive dinners, lavish gifts, and grand gestures. Dominic made me feel like I was the center of his universe. He promised me the world, and I believed every word. "Evelyn, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen," he whispered in my ear as we danced at a gala. "I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy." I melted into his arms, convinced that I had found my soulmate. When he proposed just 3 months later, I didn't hesitate to say yes. Our wedding was a grand affair, with no expense spared. I felt like a princess as I walked down the aisle in my designer gown, Dominic waiting for me at the altar with a smile that could light up the room. "I love you, Evelyn," he said as he slipped the ring on my finger. "I promise to cherish you forever." I believed him with all my heart. We settled into married life, and for a while everything was perfect. Dominic continued to shower me with attention and gifts, and I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. But then, just a few months into our marriage, I discovered I was pregnant. I was overjoyed, but Dominic's reaction was not what I expected. "A baby now?" he asked, his brow furrowed. I thought we agreed to wait a few years. I was taken aback by his response. We had discussed starting a family, but I didn't realize he had such a specific timeline in mind. "I know it's a bit sooner than we planned, but isn't it wonderful news?" I asked, trying to gauge his reaction. Dominic's face softened, and he pulled me into an embrace. "Of course it is, darling. I'm just surprised, that's all. We'll make it work." But as my pregnancy progressed, I began to notice subtle changes in Dominic's behavior. He became more controlling, more possessive. He started questioning my every move, demanding to know where I was and who I was with at all times. I chalked it up to nerves about impending fatherhood and tried to reassure him that everything would be fine. But deep down, a nagging feeling told me that something wasn't right. When Arya was born, Dominic's behavior only intensified. He criticized everything I did, from the way I changed her diaper to the way I held her. He insisted on being present for every feeding, every bath time, every moment of her life. At first, I thought he was just being an attentive father. But as the weeks turned into months, I realized that his attention was more about control than love. "You're doing it wrong," he would snap as I tried to soothe Arya's cries. "Give her to me. I'll show you how it's done." I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells, trying to anticipate his every mood and whim. I was exhausted. both physically and emotionally, but I didn't dare complain. I was afraid of what he might do if I pushed back. Looking back, I can see all the red flags I missed. The way he isolated me from my friends and family, the way he made me feel like I was nothing without him. I was so blinded by love that I couldn't see the truth. But now, as I sit in the darkness, watching my daughter sleep, I know I can't let this continue. I have to find a way out, not just for myself, but for Arya. She deserves a better life than this. I just hope I have the strength to do what needs to be done. Arya's cries pierce the night, and I stumble out of bed, exhausted. It's been weeks since I've had a full night's sleep, and the toll is starting to show. As I enter the nursery, I find Dominic already there, holding our daughter. "I've got this," he says, his voice cold. "Go back to bed." I hesitate, wanting to comfort my own child, but the look in Dominic's eyes tells me not to argue. I retreat to our bedroom, feeling helpless and alone. The next morning, I'm in the kitchen preparing breakfast when Dominic storms in, his face contorted with anger. "Why isn't the laundry done?" he demands, holding up a shirt. "I have a big meeting today, and I need this pressed." I glance at the clock, realizing I've lost track of time while caring for Arya. "I'm sorry, I'll do it right now," I say, reaching for the shirt, but Dominic yanks it away, his eyes narrowing. "You're always making excuses." He sneers. "I work hard to provide for this family, and you can't even handle simple household chores." I feel my cheeks burn with shame and frustration. "I'm doing the best I can," I protest weakly. Dominic scoffs. "Your best isn't good enough. I deserve better than this." He storms out of the kitchen, leaving me fighting back tears. I know I should stand up for myself, but I'm too tired, too beaten down. Later that day, I'm trying to soothe a fussy Arya when the phone rings. It's the bank, informing me that my credit card has been declined. Confused, I hang up and log into our online banking account. What I see makes my blood run cold. Our savings account, the one I thought we were using for Arya's college fund, is nearly empty. Thousands of dollars, gone without a trace. I confront Dominic that evening, holding up the bank statement with shaking hands. "What is this?" I demand. "Where did all our money go?" Dominic barely glances at the paper before shrugging. "I had some expenses come up. Business stuff you wouldn't understand." "Business stuff?" I echo, incredulous. "Dominic, that was our daughter's college fund. How could you just spend it without telling me?" He fixes me with a cold stare. "I don't have to tell you anything. I'm the one who earns the money in this family. I'll spend it how I see fit." I reel back as if slapped. "But we're supposed to be partners," I whisper. "We should make these decisions together." Dominic laughs, a harsh, ugly sound. "Partners? You're nothing without me, Evelyn. I gave you everything. This house, those clothes, that baby. You owe me." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Is this what our marriage has become? A transaction, a debt to be paid? I turn away, fighting back tears. "I'm going to put Arya to bed," I say, my voice trembling. As I rock my daughter to sleep, I feel a sense of despair wash over me. How did I let things get this bad? How did I become so dependent on a man who treats me like a possession? I think of my own mother, who raised me on her own after my father left. She was so strong, so independent. What would she think of me now, trapped in a marriage with a man who doesn't respect me? I kiss Arya's forehead, feeling a fierce surge of love and protectiveness. I can't let her grow up thinking this is normal. I can't let Dominic's poison infect her too. I may be trapped for now, but I won't let him break me. I'll find a way out, no matter what it takes. For Arya's sake and for my own. I'm at my wit's end when I finally meet best friend Scarlett. We've been friends since college, and she's always been there for me, no matter what. I don't know what to do, I confess, my voice breaking. Dominic is controlling every aspect of my life. I feel like I'm suffocating. Scarlett listens patiently, her brow furrowed with concern. "Evelyn, this isn't right," she says gently. "He shouldn't be treating you like this." I nod, wiping away tears. "I know, but I'm scared, Scarlett. He's threatened to take Arya away from me if I try to leave." Scarlett's eyes widen. "He can't do that," she insists. "You're Arya's mother. You have rights." She helps me gather evidence of Dominic's deceit and verbal abuse. We take screenshots of the bank statements, documenting the missing funds. I start keeping a journal, writing down every hurtful thing he says to me. Armed with this information, I confront Dominic. "We need to talk," I say, my voice shaking but determined. He barely looks up from his phone. Can't it wait? I'm busy. No, it can't wait, I insist. Dominic, I know about the money. I know you've been hiding things from me. At this, he finally meets my gaze, his eyes narrowing. What are you talking about? I hold up the bank statements. You've been spending our savings without telling me. Our daughter's college fund. Gone. Dominic scoffs. Is that what this is about? It's just money, Evelyn. I'll make more. It's not just about the money, I say, my voice rising. It's about the lying, the secrets. It's about the way you treat me. He stands up, towering over me. The way I treat you? I give you everything, Evelyn. A beautiful home, a comfortable life. And this is how you repay me? By snooping through my things and making accusations? I take a step back, my heart pounding. I'm not making accusations. I'm telling the truth, and I'm done letting you control me. Dominic's face contorts with rage. You ungrateful bitch, he snarls. If you think you can leave me, think again. I'll make sure you never see Arya again. His words hit me like a slap in the face. You can't do that, I whisper, echoing Scarlett's words. Watch me, he says, his voice cold. I have money, connections. I'll bury you in court. You'll be lucky to get visitation, let alone custody. I feel like I can't breathe. The thought of losing Arya is too much to bear. But then I think of the evidence Scarlett and I have gathered, the bank statements, the journal entries, the recordings of Dominic's threats. I straighten my spine, looking him dead in the eye. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Dominic. I have proof of everything you've done, the lies, the abuse. If you try to take Arya away from me, I'll fight you with everything I have. For a moment, Dominic looks stunned. Then his face twists into an ugly sneer. You think you're so clever, don't you? But you're forgetting one thing. I own you, Evelyn. I own everything, and I'll destroy you before I let you leave me. With that, he storms out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I sink to the floor, my legs shaking. I know this is just the beginning. Dominic won't let me go without a fight, but for the first time in a long time, I feel a flicker of hope. I'm not alone anymore. I have Scarlett, and I have the truth on my side. I'll do whatever it takes to protect my daughter and myself, even if it means going to war with the man I once loved. With Scarlett's help, I begin secretly planning my escape from Dominic's clutches. We meet in quiet coffee shops and secluded parks, always looking over our shoulders for any sign of my husband. You need to start saving money, Scarlett advises. Open a separate bank account, one that Dominic doesn't know about. I nod, jotting down notes in a small, nondescript notebook. I'll start skimming a little bit from the grocery budget each week. He won't notice if I'm careful. Scarlett also helps me document Dominic's abuse. We take photos of the bruises on my arms, the holes he's punched in the walls during his rages. I save every threatening text message, every cruel email. It's during one of these evidence-gathering sessions that I stumble upon a shocking discovery. I'm going through Dominic's email, looking for anything incriminating, when I find a string of messages between him and his secretary, Tessa. At first, I think they're just work-related, but as I read on, my stomach twists with a sickening realization. They're not just colleagues, they're having an affair. I miss you, Tessa writes in one email. Last night was amazing. When can we do it again? Dominic's response is filled with explicit details of their trysts, of the things he wants to do to her. I feel like I'm going to be sick. But even as the betrayal cuts me to the core, I feel a flicker of something else. Hope. If Dominic is cheating on me, that means I have even more leverage against him. I print out the emails with shaking hands, adding them to my growing pile of evidence. Armed with this new information, I finally work up the courage to file for divorce. Scarlett comes with me to the courthouse, holding my hand as I fill out the paperwork. When we return home, Dominic is waiting for us. Where have you been? He demands, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. I take a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. I was filing for divorce, I say, my voice steady. I'm leaving you, Dominic. For a moment, he looks stunned. Then his face contorts with rage. You can't leave me, he snarls. I won't let you. He takes a step towards me, his fists clenched, but before he can lay a hand on me, Scarlett steps between us. Don't you dare touch her, she says, her voice like steel. We have evidence of everything you've done, the abuse, the cheating. If you come near Evelyn or Arya again, we'll go straight to the police. Dominic's eyes widen as he takes in the folder in Scarlett's hand. You're bluffing, he says, but I can hear the uncertainty in his voice. "Try me," Scarlett replies, her gaze unwavering. For a long moment, they stare each other down. Then Dominic takes a step back, his face twisting into an ugly sneer. "Fine," he spits. "You want a divorce? You've got it, but don't think for a second that this is over. I'll make your life a living hell, Evelyn. You'll be begging me to take you back." With that, he storms out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I collapse onto the couch, my legs shaking. Scarlett sits beside me, pulling me into a tight hug. "You did it," she whispers. "You're free." But even as relief washes over me, I know that this is just the beginning. Dominic won't let me go without a fight. He'll do everything in his power to make me suffer. But for the first time in years, I feel a glimmer of hope. I've taken the first step towards reclaiming my life, my freedom, and I won't let Dominic break me. Not again. Not ever. The divorce proceedings begin, and I steel myself for the battle ahead. Dominic has hired a high-powered attorney, a shark in an expensive suit, but I have Scarlett by my side and a fierce determination to protect my daughter. Our first meeting is tense, with Dominic glaring at me from across the conference room table. His lawyer, a man with slicked-back hair and a predatory smile, leans forward. "Mrs. Hawthorne," he begins, his voice dripping with condescension. "My client is willing to offer you a generous settlement in exchange for your cooperation in keeping this matter private." I feel a flush of anger rising in my cheeks. "Generous?" I repeat, my voice tight. "You mean hush money, to keep me quiet about the abuse, the cheating." Dominic's lawyer smirks. "Let's not throw around accusations, Mrs. Hawthorne. My client denies any wrongdoing." I lean forward, meeting his gaze head-on. "I have proof," I say, my voice steady. "Emails, text messages, photographs. I'm not afraid to use them." For a moment, the lawyer's smug expression falters. Then he recovers, clearing his throat. "Be that as it may, I think we can all agree that a protracted legal battle is in no one's best interests, especially not your daughter's." At the mention of Arya, I feel a stab of fear. Dominic knows she's my weakness, my Achilles heel. "What do you want?" I ask, my voice tight. Dominic leans forward, his eyes glinting with malice. "Joint custody," he says. "And a gag order. You keep your mouth shut about our marriage, and I'll let you see Arya on weekends." I feel like I've been punched in the gut. The thought of being separated from my daughter, of only seeing her a few days a month, is unbearable. But then I think of the alternative, of Arya growing up in a home filled with anger and violence, of learning that love means pain and fear. I take a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. "No," I say, my voice ringing with conviction. "I won't agree to that. I want full custody, and I want you out of our lives for good." Dominic's face twists with rage. "You can't do that," he snarls. "I'm her father. I have rights." "You lost those rights the first time you raised a hand to me," I say, my voice shaking with anger. "The first time you chose your own selfish desires over your family." I slide a folder across the table, watching as Dominic's lawyer flips through the pages with a growing look of unease. "This is just the beginning," I say, my voice steady. "If you try to fight me on this, I'll make sure the whole world knows what kind of man you really are." For a long moment, Dominic stares at me, his eyes burning with hatred. Then he turns to his lawyer, muttering something under his breath. The lawyer clears his throat, his expression strained. "Perhaps we should take a break," he suggests. "Reconvene at a later date, when emotions aren't running quite so high." I nod, feeling a rush of triumph. I know this is just the first battle in what will likely be a long and brutal war. But for now, I've won. As I leave the conference room, Scarlett falls into step beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "You were amazing in there," she says, her voice filled with pride. "I've never seen you so strong, so fearless." I manage a small smile even as my heart races with adrenaline. "I had to be," I say, "for Arya, for myself." We step out into the bright sunlight, and I take a deep breath of fresh air. It feels like the first time I've been able to breathe freely in years. I know the road ahead will be hard. Dominic won't give up without a fight, and I'll have to be strong, and stronger than I've ever been. But for the first time in a long time, I feel a flicker of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, I can build a better life for my daughter and myself. A life free from fear, from pain, a life filled with love and laughter and joy. And I'll fight like hell to make that life a reality. The divorce is finalized, and I'm granted full custody of Arya. Dominic is ordered to pay child support and alimony, a fact that leaves him seething with rage. But even as I celebrate my victory, I know that he won't let this go easily. Dominic is a man who hates to lose, who will stop at nothing to get what he wants. I'm proven right just a few days later, when I'm awoken in the middle of the night by the sound of shattering glass. I bolt out of bed, my heart pounding, and race to Arya's room. She's sleeping peacefully, her little face relaxed in slumber. But as I turn to leave, I catch a glimpse of movement outside her window. It's Dominic, his face twisted with fury. He's holding a baseball bat, the shattered remains of the window at his feet. "You think you've won?" he snarls, his voice slurring with drink. "You think you can just take my daughter away from me?" I feel a rush of fear, followed quickly by anger. "Get out of here, Dominic," I say, my voice shaking. "You're violating the restraining order. I'll call the police." He laughs, a harsh, ugly sound. "Go ahead," he taunts. "Call them. By the time they get here, I'll be long gone, and you'll be left picking up the pieces, just like always." I take a step forward, my fists clenched at my sides. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Dominic. I'm done letting you control me, letting you hurt me." His eyes narrow, and he takes a step closer, the bat raised threateningly. "You should be afraid," he growls. "I'll make your life a living hell, Evelyn. I'll take Arya away from you, one way or another." But even as he speaks, I feel a sense of calm washing over me. I've spent so long living in fear of this man, letting him dictate my every move, but not anymore. I reach into my pocket, my fingers closing around my phone. "I have proof, Dominic," I say, my voice steady. "Proof of your abuse, your cheating, your illegal business dealings. If you come near me or Arya again, I'll expose everything." For a moment, he looks stunned. Then his face contorts with rage, and he takes another step forward, the bat raised high. But before he can swing, the sound of sirens fills the air. Red and blue lights flash through the broken window, casting an eerie glow over the room. Dominic freezes, his eyes wide with panic. He looks from me to the window, his grip on the bat slackening. "This isn't over," he snarls, backing away. "I'll find a way to make you pay, Evelyn. I swear it." With that, he turns and runs, disappearing into the night just as the police cars screech to a halt outside. I sink to the floor, my legs shaking with relief. Arya stirs in her crib, her little face scrunching up in confusion. "It's okay, baby," I whisper, gathering her into my arms. "Mommy's here. You're safe now." The police take my statement, and I show them the evidence I've gathered against Dominic. They assure me that they'll do everything in their power to keep us safe, to make sure he never comes near us again. But even as I nod and thank them, I know that this is just the beginning. Dominic is a man who doesn't know how to lose, who will stop at nothing to get his revenge. I'll have to be vigilant, always looking over my shoulder, always ready for the next attack. But I'm not alone anymore. I have Scarlett and the support of the law on my side. And most importantly, I have Arya, my beautiful, innocent daughter, who deserves a life free from fear and pain. I'll do whatever it takes to give her that life, to build a future for us that's filled with love and laughter and joy, even if it means facing down the devil himself. 5 years have passed since that fateful night when Dominic shattered our window and threatened to take Arya away from me. In that time, I've worked hard to rebuild my life, to create a safe and happy home for my daughter. I've thrown myself into my career, working my way up the corporate ladder at a prestigious marketing firm. My colleagues admire my tenacity, my ability to think outside the box, and come up with creative solutions to even the toughest challenges. But my greatest achievement is Arya. She's grown into a bright, curious 5-year-old with her father's dark hair and my green eyes. She's the light of my life, the reason I get up every morning and face the world with a smile. We have a little routine, Arya and I. Every morning I make her breakfast and pack her lunch, then walk her to the bus stop for kindergarten. In the evenings, we curl up on the couch and read stories together, or have dance parties in the living room. It's a simple life, but it's ours, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. One day, as I'm walking Arya to the bus stop, I bump into a familiar face. It's Liam, a single father who lives down the street. I've seen him around the neighborhood, always with his little boy, Max, in tow. "Evelyn, right?" he says, smiling warmly. "I don't think we've officially met. I'm Liam." I shake his hand, feeling a flutter of something in my chest. Nice to meet you, Liam. This is my daughter, Arya. Arya waves shyly, hiding behind my leg. Liam crouches down to her level, his eyes twinkling. Hi there, Arya. I like your backpack. Is that a unicorn? Arya nods, a tiny smile spreading across her face. Yeah, unicorns are my favorite. Liam grins, standing back up. Well, maybe we can all get together for a playdate sometime. Max loves unicorns, too. I find myself nodding, a warm feeling spreading through my chest. That would be great. Here, let me give you my number. As we exchange numbers, I can't help but feel a spark of something. A connection, a sense of possibility. Over the next few weeks, Liam and I start spending more time together. We take the kids to the park, have picnics in the backyard. He's kind and funny and thoughtful, always ready with a joke or a helping hand. And he's an amazing father. I watch him with Max, the way he listens patiently to his son's endless chatter, the way he gets down on the floor to play with him. It's clear that he loves his boy with every fiber of his being. Slowly but surely, I feel myself falling for him, and for the first time in a long time, I allow myself to imagine a future that's not just about survival, but about happiness. But even as I bask in the glow of new love, I can't shake the feeling that Dominic is still out there, waiting for his chance to strike. And I'm right. One evening, as Liam and I are enjoying a quiet dinner while the kids play in the living room, there's a knock at the door. I open it to find Dominic standing there, his face haggard and his eyes wild. Evelyn, he says, his voice raspy, I need to talk to you. I feel a rush of fear, followed quickly by anger. What are you doing here, Dominic? You know you're not supposed to come near me or Arya. He holds up his hands, his expression pleading. I know, but I had to see you. I've lost everything, Evelyn, my job, my money, even Tessa left me. I have nothing left. For a moment, I feel a flicker of pity, but then I remember all the pain he's caused, all the fear and heartache. I'm sorry, Dominic, I say, my voice firm, but that's not my problem anymore. You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences. His face twists with rage, and he takes a step forward. You did this to me, you bitch. You ruined my life. But before he can say another word, Liam is there, stepping between us. I think you should leave, he says, his voice calm but firm, before I call the police. Dominic looks from Liam to me, his expression a mix of anger and desperation. But finally he turns and walks away, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As I watch him go, I feel a sense of closure wash over me. I know that he'll always be a part of my past, a shadow that I can never fully escape. But I also know that I'm stronger than he is. I've survived his abuse, his manipulation. I've built a life for myself and my daughter, a life filled with love and joy and possibility. And as I turn back to Liam, to the man who has shown me what true love and partnership can be, I know that I'm finally free. Free to live, to love, to be happy. And that's the greatest revenge of all. I was folding laundry in the quiet of our suburban home when the phone rang. It was an ordinary Thursday, but that phone call was about to shatter the mundanity of my life. I wiped my hands on my apron as I answered. Hey, Mom, it's Lucas, came the voice of my son, who had ventured out into the world, leaving the nest for college 2 years ago. Lucas, darling, is everything okay? I asked, a smile naturally forming on my lips at the sound of his voice. There was a pause, a hesitation I wasn't used to with Lucas. Mom, I need to ask you something. Where's Dad these days? I frowned slightly, puzzled. Your father? He's been really busy with work. He's staying at the company's apartment for a while. Why do you ask? Another pause, longer this time. Lucas's voice, when it came, was laden with uncertainty. Mom, I think Dad's company doesn't have any company apartments. My heart skipped a beat. How do you know that? Well, I was at this job fair, and I overheard some people talking about Dad's company. They said there aren't any company apartments. Mom, is it possible that Dad is lying to us? The room suddenly felt colder, the walls closing in. I struggled to maintain my composure. Lucas, are you sure? Maybe you misunderstood. No, Mom, I'm sure, and I think Dad is seeing someone else. The words hit me like a physical blow. Lucas, that's a serious accusation. Are you sure you're not mistaken? I wish I were, Mom. I saw Dad with this woman younger, maybe in her 20s. They seemed close. Too close. My hands trembled, the phone almost slipping from my grasp. The man I had spent 20 years of my life with, could he really betray us like this? Mom, are you there? Lucas's voice was laced with concern. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. Yes, I'm here. Lucas, thank you for telling me. I need some time to think about this. We'll figure this out, Mom. I'm here for you, he said firmly. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, the unfinished laundry forgotten. My mind raced with questions and fears. Had I been so blind? Was the love and trust I invested in my marriage a mere facade? The thought of Mark with another woman, especially someone Lucas's age, churned my stomach. I had to find out the truth. But how? The idea of confronting Mark terrified me. Yet the thought of living in ignorance was even worse. I needed answers, and I was determined to get them, no matter how painful they might be. As the sun set outside, casting long shadows across the room, I realized that my once peaceful life was now on the brink of a storm, and I had to brace myself for whatever was coming. Saturday morning dawned with a heaviness that seemed to mirror my mood. Mark was due to visit this weekend, but the thought no longer brought me joy. The words of my son, Lucas, echoed in my mind, tainting every memory I had of Mark. As I prepared breakfast, the doorbell rang. It was my in-laws, George and Helen, arriving for their weekly visit. Despite the turmoil within, I greeted them with a forced smile. "Emma, dear, you look a bit off. Is everything all right?" Helen asked, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "Just a headache," I lied, unwilling to burden them with my suspicions. We sat around the breakfast table, chatting about mundane things. But my heart wasn't in it. My gaze kept drifting to Mark's empty chair, a stark reminder of the growing distance between us. When the topic turned to Mark, Helen's tone was warm. "He's been working so hard lately. You must be proud of him, getting that big project at the office." I nodded, my throat tight. "Yes, very proud." George, always the jovial one, chimed in. "Remember how he used to say he'd be a big shot one day? Looks like he was right." Their pride in their son was palpable, and it twisted the knife in my heart further. How could I shatter this image they had of Mark? The loving son, the dedicated husband. But beneath that facade lay a different truth, one that Lucas had unwittingly uncovered. As they continued to praise Mark, a part of me wanted to scream, to tell them that their perfect son was a liar, a cheat. But I couldn't, not without proof. The rest of their visit passed in a blur. I was there, but not really. My mind was elsewhere, caught in a storm of betrayal and hurt. After they left, I found myself wandering through the house, lost in thought. Our home, once a haven of love and security, now felt like a house of cards, ready to collapse at any moment. I stumbled upon a photo album, pages filled with pictures of happier times. Mark and I laughing, holding each other. Was it all just a lie? Had I been living a dream while he lived a double life? That evening, as I lay in bed, sleep eluded me. I realized that I couldn't let this go. I needed to confront Mark, to hear the truth from his lips. Whatever that truth might be, I was ready to face it. I had to be. For my own sanity. And deep down, a part of me yearned for revenge. If Mark had shattered our vows, then he didn't deserve my silence. He didn't deserve the facade of a happy family that I had helped build. As the night deepened, so did my resolve. I would confront Mark, and if my fears were confirmed, he would pay for his betrayal. In what way, I wasn't sure yet, but he would pay. Monday arrived with a sense of foreboding. I had spent the weekend in turmoil, oscillating between denial and a desire for the truth. Today I decided I would confront Mark. As the clock ticked closer to the time Mark was due to arrive, my anxiety grew. My hands trembled as I prepared coffee, each spoonful of sugar sounding unnervingly loud in the silent kitchen. The doorbell rang, jolting me from my thoughts. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. Mark stood there, his smile faltering slightly as he noticed my somber expression. "Emma, what's wrong?" he asked, stepping inside. I led him to the living room, my heart pounding. "We need to talk, Mark." He looked concerned now, his eyes searching mine. "Of course, anything." I took a deep breath, the words I had rehearsed all weekend spilling out. "Lucas called. He said something disturbing about you being unfaithful." Mark's reaction was immediate, his face flushed, his eyes darting away. "Lucas said what? That's ridiculous, Emma." But his denial lacked conviction, his voice betraying him. I pressed on, the hurt and anger giving me strength. "He saw you, Mark, with a younger woman. He's convinced you're having an affair." Mark's posture stiffened, his expression hardening. "Lucas is mistaken. I can't believe you'd think I'd do something like that." But the more he denied, the clearer the truth became. His body language, the evasion in his eyes, it all pointed to one painful reality. Mark was lying. "Are you really going to stand there and lie to me, Mark?" My voice trembled with emotion. "After all these years, you owe me the truth." For a moment he looked like he might confess, but then his face closed off, his voice cold. "I have nothing to confess, Emma. If you choose to believe Lucas over me, then that's your problem." His words felt like a slap in the face. The man I had loved, trusted, and supported was now a stranger, hiding behind a veil of lies and deceit. The conversation spiraled into an argument, accusations and denials flying. But no confession came. Mark maintained his innocence, even as his lies crumbled around him. Finally, exhausted and emotionally drained, I ended the confrontation. "I can't do this anymore, Mark. I don't know who you are." Mark left, his departure leaving a cold void in the house. I sat there alone, the weight of his betrayal crushing me. But amidst the pain, a fire was kindling within me. A fire fueled by betrayal and the desire for revenge. Mark had chosen to deceive and hurt me. Now, it was my turn to make him pay for his lies. I didn't know how yet, but I was determined. Mark would not get away with this. He would feel the consequences of his actions, just as I was feeling the pain of his betrayal. The days following my confrontation with Mark were a blur of emotions. Betrayal, anger, and disbelief swirled within me, a constant storm. But amidst the chaos, a new resolve was forming. I wouldn't be a victim. I would fight back. One morning, as I sat at the kitchen table going through our finances, the reality of my situation became starkly clear. Mark had always controlled the money, and now I was left with barely enough to cover the bills. The thought of asking him for more was intolerable. Determined, I decided to take control of my life. I started looking for a job, something I hadn't done since before Lucas was born. I scoured the classifieds, sent out resumes, and finally I got a call for an interview at a local retail store. The interview day arrived, and as I sat across from the store manager, Mr. Thompson, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. His questions were straightforward, and I answered them as best as I could, emphasizing my eagerness to learn and adapt. "You've been out of the workforce for a while," Mr. Thompson noted, his tone neutral. "Yes," I admitted, "but I'm ready to start again. I'm hardworking and quick to learn." Mr. Thompson nodded, his expression softening. "All right, Mrs. Thompson, we're willing to give you a chance." Gratitude flooded through me. This was more than a job. It was a step towards my independence. As I started working, I found a sense of empowerment that I hadn't felt in years. Each day at the store was challenging, but it was also liberating. I was making my own money, no longer solely dependent on Mark. However, my newfound independence seemed to irk Mark. He started calling me, his tone oscillating between condescension and anger. "Why do you need to work?" he sneered during one call. "I provide for you, don't I? Or are you trying to make a point?" His words stung, but they also fueled my resolve. "I'm working because I want to be independent, Mark. I'm not your puppet anymore." There was a pause, and then he laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "Well, if you're so independent, maybe I should stop supporting you altogether. See how you like that." The threat was clear, but I refused to be intimidated. "Do what you must, Mark. I will survive, with or without your support." After that call, Mark cut the financial support he had been giving me. It was a blow, but not an unexpected one. I tightened my belt, budgeted rigorously, and focused on my job. As the days passed, my anger towards Mark turned into something else, a burning desire for revenge. He thought he could control me, break me. But he was wrong. I was stronger than he knew. I started to plan, to think of ways to expose him for what he was. A cheater, a liar, a manipulator. I wanted him to feel a fraction of the pain he had caused me, and I was willing to do whatever it took to make that happen. The opportunity for my revenge presented itself unexpectedly. Mark's parents, George and Helen, invited us for a family dinner, a tradition we had maintained for years. This time, however, the dinner was anything but ordinary for me. It was the stage where Mark's facade would crumble. I arrived early to help with preparations, my heart heavy yet determined. Helen noticed my subdued mood, but attributed it to stress. Little did she know the turmoil that churned within me. As we were setting the table, the doorbell rang. It was Mark, his usual confident self, unaware of the storm that was about to hit him. Following him was Lucas, my son, the bearer of the truth. Dinner commenced with light conversation, but the air was heavy with unspoken words. I glanced at Lucas, giving him a subtle nod. It was time. Lucas cleared his throat, commanding the attention of the table. "There's something I need to say, something about Dad." Mark laughed it off. "What is it, son? Another one of your pranks?" But Lucas's expression was grave. "No, Dad, this is serious. I saw you with another woman. Not just once, multiple times." The room went silent. Mark's face turned ashen, his confident demeanor faltering. "What are you talking about, Lucas?" "That's nonsense," Mark stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. Lucas's gaze was unwavering. "I saw you, Dad. You were with her at a hotel. She's young, about my age. You can't deny it." Helen gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. George's face hardened, his eyes narrowing at Mark. "Is this true, Mark? Are you cheating on Emma?" Helen's voice was a whisper, laced with disbelief and pain. Mark's facade finally broke. He looked from face to face, realizing the gravity of the situation. "It's not what you think. She's just a colleague." But his weak defense fell on deaf ears. The damage was done. George stood up, his voice thundering. "You bring shame to this family. How could you do this to Emma, to your own son?" Mark tried to argue, to justify his actions, but his words were empty, hollow. The truth was laid bare for all to see. I watched, a mix of satisfaction and sorrow in my heart. Mark had been exposed. His betrayal, his lies, all out in the open. But the pain it caused his parents, the disappointment in Lucas's eyes, was a bitter pill to swallow. The dinner ended abruptly, the family shattered by the revelation. Mark left, his head hung low, his image as the perfect son, the perfect husband, destroyed. As I drove home that night, a part of me felt vindicated, but another part grieved for the loss of the family I once knew. Yet amidst the chaos, I knew one thing for certain. Mark would pay for his betrayal. This was just the beginning of his downfall. The fallout from the dinner was immediate and far-reaching. Mark's betrayal had not only fractured our family, but also stained his reputation. His parents, once his staunchest supporters, were now his fiercest critics. In the following weeks, I watched as Mark's life began to unravel. His affair, once hidden in the shadows, was now public knowledge, and the consequences were devastating. His work suffered, friends distanced themselves, and even our son, Lucas, struggled to come to terms with his father's actions. But amidst the chaos, a plan formed in my mind, a plan for retribution. Mark had taken so much from me, it was time he understood the pain he had inflicted. I began by reaching out to a lawyer, a friend from before I married Mark. I explained my situation, the years of emotional neglect, and Mark's recent infidelity. She was sympathetic and immediately offered to help. "We'll make sure you get what you deserve, Emma. It's time for Mark to face the consequences of his actions," she said with determination. Armed with legal support, I confronted Mark about a divorce. He was taken aback, his arrogance faltering under the weight of his crumbling world. "Emma, please, let's talk about this. I know I made a mistake, but I can change," he pleaded, a shadow of his former self. But I was resolute. "It's too late for that, Mark. You've made your choices, and now you must live with them." The divorce proceedings were messy, as Mark tried to cling to his rapidly diminishing assets. But my lawyer was relentless, and in the end, I was awarded a significant portion of our shared assets, including the house. As Mark's world crumbled, I began to rebuild mine. The divorce had granted me a substantial settlement, which I used to secure my financial independence. I continued working, finding solace and strength in my newfound autonomy. The final blow to Mark came unexpectedly. His affair with the younger woman, now his only solace, ended abruptly. She left him, unable to cope with the public scrutiny and the reality of being with a man whose life was in ruins. Mark was left alone, a shadow of the man he once was. His career, his reputation, his personal life, all had fallen apart because of his choices. As for me, I found peace in my independence. I reconnected with old friends, explored new hobbies, and even began dating again, something I hadn't thought possible. The path to healing was long and fraught with challenges, but I emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Mark's betrayal had broken me, but in the end, it had also freed me. I had faced my deepest fears and come out victorious. And though I took no pleasure in Mark's downfall, there was a sense of justice in seeing him face the consequences of his actions. He had chosen his path, and now he had to walk it alone. As I looked to the future, I knew that new horizons awaited me, horizons filled with hope, strength, and the promise of a life lived on my terms.
I'm Amelia, about to turn 27 this year. I've been happily married for 5 years, and my son Martin just celebrated his 4th birthday. I used to work full-time after we got married, but now I balance part-time work at the same company. My husband Brian is 33 years older than me. Brian's initial enthusiasm in our dating days was exciting, but after we got married, his behavior changed. He became more domineering. Brian has a 20-year-old sister named Jane, and their age difference seems to make Brian more indulgent with her. Before we were married, I didn't mind Jane's frequent visits. I assumed they had a close relationship. But after we tied the knot, I noticed Jane's behavior shift. She often drops by unannounced, expecting to be served without bringing anything to show her appreciation. Brian, instead of addressing this, expects me to cater to her demands. Jane treats me like I'm invisible, only speaking to Brian. Despite not preparing for an extra guest, I end up serving dinner to Jane. Brian, rather than understanding, blames me for not being more considerate. Even when Jane apologizes, it's clear she enjoys the preferential treatment Brian gives her. Left with leftovers, I make my own meal while Brian and Jane chat on the sofa, leaving the dining table a mess. They treat Martin and me more like hired help than family. One evening, as I'm about to bathe Martin, Brian interrupts loudly, demanding I buy a cake for Jane despite the late hour. Jane insists on having it right away, and Brian blames me for the delay. Feeling pressured, I reluctantly take Martin to the cake shop. Overhearing their conversation, I learn they're criticizing me and questioning why Brian married me. Martin, though too young to understand the words, senses the tension. I try to hide my frustration and ask him about his cake preference. He cheerfully requests one with lots of fruit. Our trip to the cake shop was filled with discussions about cakes, momentarily distracting me from Brian's harsh words. Martin and I arrived just before closing time. Fortunately, we found the cake Jane desired, so we purchased 2 cakes, including the fruit-loaded one Martin wanted. Back home, I served the cakes to Jane and Brian, then prepared Martin's cake and headed to the dining room. The moment I placed it in front of Martin, Jane pointed and expressed her desire for that cake. Before I could react, Brian moved Martin's chosen cake in front of Jane, disregarding Martin's protests. Brian justified his action, claiming he bought the cake with his earnings and had the right to choose for Martin. Unable to contain my emotions any longer, I voiced my dissatisfaction. In response, Brian threatened with divorce. Martin, who had stopped crying, anxiously held my hand and then, after some thought, said, "Mom, I also love cake with strawberries on it. Yes, it's really delicious." He mentioned this while eating the cake initially wanted by Jane. Feeling that Martin was enduring too much, I lifted his cake plate. When I saw Jane reaching for it, I took Martin to the next room so he could enjoy his cake in peace. Brian apologized to Jane, claiming he was sorry for being stingy. Despite wanting to retort, I held back for Martin's sake. Watching Martin innocently enjoy his cake was a heartwarming sight. After finishing the cake, we decided to have a late bath and sleep in Martin's bed. The next morning, I discovered Jane had already left. As I prepared breakfast, I heard Martin crying. Shockingly, his piggy bank, a gift from my father, was broken and the saved money was gone. Martin, who always said goodnight to the piggy bank, was left heartbroken. When I questioned Brian about it, he casually mentioned that Jane needed some money, so she took it from the piggy bank. Holding a crying and shaking Martin, I felt his pain so acutely that I cried with him. It was painful to witness Brian prioritizing and caring for his sister more than our son. Expressing my anger and sadness, I confronted Brian, breaking my usual silence on arguments in front of Martin. Brian, without a word, went to the bedroom and returned with something shocking in hand: divorce papers. I discovered the hidden divorce papers that Brian had tucked away somewhere I didn't know. In a sudden burst, he confronted me, shoving the papers at me before storming out of the house with a loud bang. Martin, who had never cried over the issues with Brian and Jane, seemed to have reached his limit, crying since last night. Unable to bear seeing Martin so hurt, I suggested skipping daycare for the day, and he happily agreed with a loud yes, showing a faint smile. We spent the day playing and bonding, with Martin bringing a picture book from the shelf, sitting on my lap, and happily remarking, "The teacher at the nursery today was Mama, right? He looks like an angel." His little heart seemed filled with patience, and I decided to make the day special by taking a day off from work. Despite causing potential trouble at my workplace, they kindly understood the situation and granted me a day off. In the morning, we visited the park, played hide and seek, and had fun in the sandbox and on the slide. When we returned home for lunch, Martin appeared sleepy, usually napping by himself, but today he fell asleep on my lap, like when he was a baby. Though I initially thought of doing household chores during his nap, I decided that today was special. Instead, I allowed myself to be healed by his peaceful sleeping face and gentle breathing. However, my serene moment was abruptly interrupted by a noise from the entrance, indicating the front door had opened. As it wasn't Brian's usual time to come home, I became suspicious and quickly hid in the bedroom closet, clutching Martin. A voice echoed through the house, and to my surprise, it was Jane. Trembling with fear, I listened as she searched for something, expressing frustration over not finding it. Jane then made a phone call, mentioning Brian and discussing their unsuccessful search. After hearing her lock the front door and leave, I put Martin to bed and contemplated the strange events. I couldn't comprehend why Jane had entered the house and what they were looking for. Suddenly, Brian seemed like a stranger, and I felt a mix of disgust and fear towards him. Swiftly packing essentials for Martin and myself, we headed to the station and took a train to my parents' house. Fortunately, their home was nearby, just 2 stations away. Although I hadn't contacted them beforehand, my parents sensed something from my expression and welcomed us without asking questions. I shared the entire ordeal with them, including my fear of staying at our house due to Brian and Jane's actions. Upon hearing my mother's suggestion that Jane might have been looking for my belongings, possibly cash or cards, I recalled my past experience as a successful CEO in the handmade goods industry. I had entrusted the company to friends when I decided to prioritize raising my child after getting married. Although I still worked part-time and communicated with the company from home, Brian was unaware that I was still the CEO. I discovered the hidden divorce papers that Brian had tucked away, suspecting that he thought I had a decent amount of savings. While I've mentioned to him that I still receive some assistance from the company, I've deliberately kept the details about being the CEO and my savings private. This secrecy stems from realizing early in our marriage that Brian struggles with managing money and tends to spend everything he earns. Kevin, at first, provided only $200 a month for food expenses and even suggested I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. However, with the financial strain of raising Martin and only $200 for food, I never agreed to be a full-time housewife. Eventually, he reluctantly allowed me to work part-time. To ensure I wouldn't consider divorce, he had me sign a postmarital property waiver through a lawyer. Since Martin's birth, I used my savings for his nursery fees and clothes. Since I've only received $200 for food, I've never asked Brian for additional funds beyond the food budget, leading him to believe I have savings. Considering Jane's apparent need for money and Brian's perception of my financial situation, they might be searching for my cash cards. I have a separate savings account dedicated to Martin with a portion of my salary directly deposited into it each month. Despite their search, they won't find the cash cards as I always carry my valuables. However, there's still an unsettling issue. Jane might be entering our house even when we're not there, and Brian may be allowing it. Following my father's advice, I decided to store my valuables including the cash cards, in my parents' safe. As I pondered their need for money, Martin approached my father, crying over his broken piggy bank and the shattered promise of saving up. My father, angered by Martin's story, vowed to call Kevin. My mother suggested finding out their purpose calmly, as Brian's mention of divorce might shift blame to us, making the divorce more favorable for him. To ascertain their purpose, I decided to record their conversation, consulting a lawyer who was a friend of my father's. Returning home, I began cooking dinner, keeping my phone screen down to record secretly. Brian arrived home, surprising me by immediately asking about my cash cards. When I questioned him, he gave vague answers, attempting to deceive me. When I remained silent, Brian grew agitated and demanded all my part-time money for his sister. Refusing, I explained it was for Martin's savings. In response, he angrily pushed the signed divorce papers toward me, declaring that I was living off his money and didn't need to save for Martin. He even uttered words implying he valued Jane more than our son. Hearing this, I stopped preparing the meal, put the divorce papers in my bag, took Martin's hand, and headed for the door. Kevin, in a loud voice, declared his serious intent for divorce, instructing me never to come back. I responded by stating I wouldn't return to a house where a stranger could come and go freely. After leaving, I received numerous messages and calls from Kevin, which I ignored. Turning off my phone, I sought refuge at my parents' house, sharing the recording and divorce papers with them. Although I confessed to having no love or affection for Kevin, I expressed concern for Martin. My parents advised me to do as I pleased, acknowledging the potential emotional impact on Martin if a divorce were to occur. While grappling with the decision to divorce Kevin, Martin expressed his hunger. My mother, seeing my distress, kindly made him hamburgers, his favorite dish. Overwhelmed with emotions, tears welled up in my eyes as my mother told Martin, with a warm smile, that she prepared the hamburgers so that he and I could visit whenever we wanted. Taking a bite, Martin exclaimed with joy, praising Gran's hamburgers and expressing a desire to eat them every day. I responded, saying it's because the hamburger contains the love I have for him. In a touching gesture, he took a big bite and offered it to me. Moved by Martin's kindness, my tears couldn't be held back, and even though I tried to stop them, they persisted. My father, noticing Martin's concern, reassured him that my tears were of happiness, not sadness. Hearing this, Martin, in a moment of understanding, hugged me, and my father's eyes turned bright red, realizing the blessing of being with family. I remarked to Martin that family is precious. Surprised, he questioned if Dad had mentioned that only Jane was family. My father gently confirmed it, but then asked Martin if he wanted to live with them as family. With a laugh, Martin happily agreed, making everyone smile. Naturally, despite contemplating divorce, the meal felt so happy that I finally decided to part ways with Kevin. I planned to inform Martin about it, and even though discussing it weighed heavily on my heart, Martin seemed to grasp the situation happily. He expressed the desire to live as a family, embracing the pet dog and calling him his younger brother, despite the dog being older. Preparations for the divorce began, starting with contacting a lawyer who was a friend of my father. The next day, we formalized the contract, and my father and Martin shared comforting laughter while I lay in bed reminiscing about my childhood. The following day, upon checking my smartphone, I found over 200 calls and messages from Kevin, showcasing his emotional instability. Exhausted, I turned off my phone and, with the lawyer's assistance, explained the situation to my parents. Jane had accumulated significant debt from a casino and shopping addiction, and Brian acted as her guarantor, planning to use my savings. The lawyer confirmed that the divorce papers had already been submitted, and Brian sobbed upon realizing it was finalized. Despite expecting disagreements about child support, he signed a pledge to pay $340 to Martin every month. In a subsequent call from Kevin, his tone lacked aggression, and he calmly admitted to financial manipulation and explained his complex feelings toward Jane. I firmly asserted my decision not to reconsider and heard his faint sobbing before he wished me happiness and hung up. Remaining strong until the end, I discussed future plans with my parents and decided to stay with them until Martin grows up. I resumed my role as a company president and later learned that Brian and Jane had informed their parents about the divorce and debt, resulting in dissownment. Today, I find happiness being with my family.